Yesterday, I got the opportunity to pose a couple of questions to my local MP, Niel Coyle. I do not, however, feel that his answers were particularly satisfactory. Let's listen. The Labour Party's largest ever donation came from a hedge fund with shares worth hundreds of millions of pounds in fossil fuels and arms manufacturers. Why has Labour dropped all climate investment save for carbon capture?
I don't know what donation that is, to be honest. But
Immediately, I just have to call this out. There is no way that Niel Coyle is not aware of the £4 million donation that was given to Labour ahead of the general election in May. It's made national headlines, but he doesn't want to discuss it. So by immediately dismissing the premise of the question, he's able to talk about it how he wants.
let's not knock arms manufacturers on this because uh, there are a lot of jobs connected to arms manufacturing in the UK, and there is a stricter regime for who we sell to in this country than almost any other country. So, if we're selling to countries like, if we were selling to Ukraine, I think that's a pretty legitimate use of British-made weaponry, right? So, I think there's quite often when people talk about arms manufacturers, it's done with a pejorative. It's done as a negative.
Frankly, this is a ridiculous argument. Of course, there are a lot of arms manufacture jobs in the UK. Have you considered maybe we shouldn't have those jobs? And on the aspect of being very sensible in who we give arms licenses to, have you looked at Israel recently?
When actually there were crucial jobs. And you heard of British Aerospace? They've got about, I think it was more than 1,000 jobs based in Southwark. So they're a local employer. They do electronics for submarines, they do cyber security issues. So guys at St Thomas's Hospital was attacked with a cyber attack. I think it originated in Russia. The companies that are involved in defence and security issues play a really, really important role.
Now, I'm by no means denying that this is absolutely a great thing to have people working against cyber attacks, but do they have to be linked with weaponry? I'm not denying that they're connected, often in industry, but they don't have to be. And also, this is just him ignoring the question because the question was actually on climate investment.
Our environmental policies were the most ambitious of any party going into the election. Even the Green Party members locally who I was in contact with were saying they actually saw our plans as more achievable than the Green Party's, which I thought was pretty solid as endorsements go from local Green Party activists.
Within Southwark, the Green Party has over 800 members. So, of course, we can't monitor what all of them say. And as a Green Party member, I completely disagree with what he's just said. There's sure, Labour's targets are far less ambitious than the Greens. Doesn't necessarily mean they're less achievable, because the plan to achieve those targets with the Greens is much stronger. So actually, if the Greens are in power, it's more likely to happen than Labour without their climate investment. And this is where it's wrong. But you can't just make those claims about Green Party members saying that without any sources.
I think the record and the commitment in the manifesto and what we're beginning to deliver. Look at GB Energy, right? It's coming, it's on its way. We're already legislating offices up in Scotland. This is something that will be about energy security, making sure we can always turn the power on in our homes, making sure it's affordable, making sure we're not reliant on Russia or any other state with dodgier human rights or other records that we may not want to be trading with, for example.
All good points. I actually fully agree with what you said. I will just remind people that GB Energy is not publicly owned. The public will not even have a controlling stake in these new projects. But it's a good thing. But it's been completely misrepresented by Labour politicians at all levels. So I just wanted to highlight that for anyone who didn't know.
The reliance on Russia was exposed when it invaded Ukraine, with lots of countries being reliant on Russian gas and have had to shift quickly, right? We scrapped the blocks that the last government put on onshore wind. So I think our policies stack up, and I'm proud of them. And I know that people always want to go faster and further. That's right to be ambitious.
Well, obviously people want to go faster and further. It's a climate emergency. And we see people dying. It's an issue now. And if we don't act super quick, there will be consequences in the welfare of people in this country and also the lives of people in other countries across the world. So of course you want to move faster and further.
But I do think we've got a really solid plan in there. In fact, some people come to me to complain. They think too much focus is on that and not on immediate pressures. And so there's always a trade-off with other policy areas in government. But
Well, look, of course people are going to complain because they've seen the narrative from the far right, from Nigel Farage, not even necessarily from the far right, from the Tories as well. But the climate change is in essence, or at least net zero is a hoax, and it's not us, and of course, people will complain to you about that. What you need to do is combat that message. And those people are wrong, okay? And you need to say, look, you're wrong. This is what we do. It's not, oh, well, stop both sidesing it. Because it's one side is right and one side is wrong. And that's fine. Facts. All scientists will tell you that. Anyway, on to the next question, which could have been about wealth tax, but I decided to go for proportional representation since it was relevant to the week we were discussing it.
So when you first campaigned to be our MP, you did also assure my household that you were a supporter of a fairer voting system.
yeah.
Having said that, you abstained on the vote on proportional representation that took place this week. Why is that?
Which one? Yeah.
Sarah Olney's motion.
I was in another meeting and the bell. When the bell goes here, you don't always know what it's for.
I understand, right? MPs can't vote on everything. They're constant debating and they have other things to do. But having campaigned on this idea of a fairer voting system for your whole political career and acknowledging later in the question's answer that it's an important issue to his constituents, he should really be proactive in ensuring that he is working towards a better electoral system. And I will say right now that of course, he's got aides to tell him what's being voted on. But you can also see, whilst you're in those offices, the motion that is being debated on and voted on at that exact moment, there are screens to tell you that.
So it was a free vote. So if we wanted to stop that, by the way, in Labour Party, we'd have just whipped it and sent everybody in. So Labour allowed that one to go through, despite a massive majority. So I think that there were plenty in the Labour Party who support it and want to see it go through. It's one. Let's see what happens next.
Just absolutely mental what he's just said, because obviously the Labour Party is not going to block it when it's their own policy and it's a 10-minute bill, so it won't get through anyway. But on that, I think it's absolutely mental because he's literally just acknowledged that he's aware of what's happened with the bill after earlier in the question saying he doesn't know what bill I'm talking about.
I hope we get to a point where we have a fairer system for Westminster. As I say, I'm not shy about that. In my local party, we've had lots of motions. In fact, the Birmingham Old Southern CLP, which is who I report to as your MP, so obviously I can report to all voters, but my local party is the bit that gets to select or deselect me. So if you want more say over your MP, you need to get involved.
There's two things about this that I found ridiculous. First was that the idea that Labour MPs are selected by their CLP. Clearly, a fair amount of them are selected by the central Labour Party, unless the CLP candidate who's winning is popular with the leadership. Also, he said if you want to get more involved with choosing your MP, you should join your CLP. That's crazy. Of course, it's a democracy. We should be involved in choosing our candidate for our own party. But if the Green Party, which I'm a member of, can't win in that constituency, well, then, he's basically acknowledged that we don't have a say in our MP. That's the problem with this system, but he didn't vote to change it.
And they passed motions and spoke at our party conference, which is a sort of policy-making body for the Labour Party. So it's something that I know has a lot of support in the local area.
Thank you for listening to this. As you can see, it's just standard kind of question dodging from politicians. I think it's interesting to observe how he didn't really use the top of Labour's talking points.